Mark Selcow. You are finally joining us as a general partner at Costanoa. We're thrilled to have you be part of the team. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
I started my career in a different industry. I worked in the biotech industry for a while. I was a pre-med, supposed to be a doctor, and really enjoyed that field, but I had the bug, and I didn't want to start something in life sciences because it was big bet, slow, high capital needs. I wanted to do something that was going to be quicker. So I co-founded two companies over the course of 17 years. The first was Baby Center. It was a consumer internet company in the late 90s. And it was and still is the largest parenting resource online and in a mobile environment. It grew to about 17 million in revenue, and we had nearly 300 employees at the time that we sold. It's since been subsequently sold and is currently operated by Johnson & Johnson and remains a really large and trusted resource for parents. That was a really satisfying experience, but it went by too quickly. So I started another company called Merced Systems after that in a very different business. It was performance management for high turnover workforces, mainly in financial industry back office, call centers, field service, and sales organizations, and grew that over the course of nearly 10 years to almost $70 million in revenue, 20% EBITDA margins, a team of 275 people with offices around the world, and sold that company to a great acquirer who made a good home for the people and the products. So it was from those experiences and the learning, the scar tissue, the esprit de corps of working with teams of people that made me want to do it again. And I wanted to find the right way to do it again. And I found that in my new career in venture capital.
So you represent one of the most glorified archetypes in Silicon Valley, the CEO, founder. What do people need to know about that archetype? And when does someone who's sitting in that seat know that it's time to work with another partner?
Well, I think it's a common archetype for very good reason. If you've sat in the seat, if you've done the job, you can just be intensely helpful to an entrepreneur and a CEO. And I'll give you a few examples. In the early days of Merced Systems, I was the sales force. I cold called. I closed all the initial business. I hired the first reps, which were a distinctly different profile than when we were larger, made the decisions around when we would need a VP and who that VP should be. So if an entrepreneur is wrestling with how to sculpt their sales organization, I not only have advice, I can tell them what my experiences were. And there are countless other examples. In the abstract, people give advice, but if you've actually done it, you can work with an entrepreneur, I believe, and let them know the mistakes and the successes that you've had. And that's what I love to do.
So speaking of mistakes, if you had a magic wand and had a do-over as CEO in either one of your companies, what would you do differently if you had the chance?
Well, there are too many small mistakes to mention, but I focus on the big ones. And the big ones happen in the important areas, and they're around people, and they're about market selection. So I'll pick one. We sold Baby Center too soon. We had intense pressure from some of our investors to do so. It was 1999. The markets were hot. We had a couple of different acquisition offers. And I didn't have the presence or the confidence to push back and say it was the wrong thing. So I regret having done that. But I've internalized that, and when I'm working with entrepreneurs, we'll be really sensitive to when it's their time, because it's their decision, not mine, as an investor. So that's one. Another one that comes to mind is terminating a senior executive in a way that I'm not proud of.
So Mark, before you joined Costanoa, you had some angel investments in companies like Greenhouse, and as a venture partner, you've brought Quizlet, Schedulo, and Springboard to the company. What do you look for in companies that you invest in?
Well, I look for great markets where there's an opportunity to do something meaningful, companies that are developing product approaches that fit those great market opportunities, and really critically, and this is where I bring my experience having been in the role to bear, founders and CEOs who I think are really well suited to successful company building.
So let's talk a little bit more about that, because how someone appears in even a series of meetings versus how they'll actually function in the seat can be wildly different. What do you look for in that founding team, and how do you assess it?
Yeah. Well, the CEO role is an intensely challenging role because it is so variable in what the needs are of it. So a couple core characteristics that really matter and that I'm sensitive to are the person needs to have great judgment, they need to have great self-awareness, they need to have enough energy and charisma to lead the organization, and they need to have enough substance and communication skill that great people will want to work for them. All of those matter. And I enjoy first determining, where the gaps are and helping a founder and a CEO in the areas where they need extra support and coaching. And if that person demonstrates judgment and self-awareness, there can be a really great relationship and a great return on that coaching. They don't have to do everything well, but they have to see where the weaknesses are so they can augment the team with other great hires.
So you built companies in some really different eras, like the 90s boom time and then the early aughts. How do you keep yourself relevant, and what trends do you think are really exciting in technology now?
I try to study every market that we're looking at to take away what I can, not only to help make better investment decisions, but to be a more supportive board member and a more supportive advisor to the CEO. Now, on what sectors that I think are interesting, I'm a business process person. I happen to really be interested in vertical industries like healthcare, education, and finance. And I'm very focused on sectors of fintech, and in particular with my business process orientation, gritty operational parts of fintech, like back office and sales channels and processing environments that are underserved by technology and where there's some really great opportunities. I have an operational orientation, so I'm really interested in operational use cases for robotics and AI, and that's an area that I'm investing time. I'm very interested in manufacturing and logistics and distribution opportunities for robotics, and I'm spending time there. And with my healthcare background and with the underpenetration of technology in healthcare, I'm always looking for opportunities in healthcare.
So this has been a hot topic for some time now, but how do CEOs create a workplace in which everyone feels included and people behave appropriately, and how do you be the prime example and also chief enforcer of a healthy culture that makes sure that everyone's behaving well and that is a great place to work?
So this is something I've thought a lot about. The companies that I led were nearly 300 people each, and when you have organizations of that size, things come up, and I've lived firsthand what confusion and action and inaction can happen, and what happens when you handle it well and poorly. So I'd say this: it starts with you as the founder and the CEO. It really is your responsibility as the culture setter and the establisher of the norms, what's acceptable and unacceptable, to be incredibly clear. And when I say it starts with you, it should start with your own assessment, including studying your own biases, conscious and unconscious, so that you're aware. Number one, make sure you understand where you are. And number two, that you've established a set of policies that are clear, communicated, and are absolutely followed up and reinforced inside the company. So that means, for example, if something comes to your attention and it seems even minor, you investigate and you ensure that there's a process and a program for looking to make sure that, number one, you get to the bottom of it. Every party feels that it's been fair and it's been transparent, irrespective of the outcome from it. And you let nothing go by that doesn't follow that process. You have to live it and reinforce it. And then finally, should something occur that's a violation of the standards that you set inside your company, you absolutely act on it. And it doesn't matter if that person who you've now learned has done something that's inappropriate, is super valuable to the company, you act. Those are the sorts of things that are your responsibility and really matter.
So you're a drummer in your copious spare time, in addition to being a father of three. I remember this came up at one point when you were assessing one of the CEOs, saying, like, this guy's a drummer. And that meant something to you. what do you look for as signals, and
Yeah.
what does something like that give you that someone else might miss?
Yeah. So the role of a drummer in a band is to be the establisher of tempo and to make sure that the downbeat, the one in every measure, is really firm. It's much like setting the culture in a company. And the second role of the drummer is to establish the feel of the song. The drummers can do really subtle things, and it can feel really differently and be invisible to people in an audience. So you can think of the drummer conventionally as the backbone, and that is a model for being a CEO that I really believe in.
So when someone's meeting you for the first time and they're like, what's my icebreaker with Mark? Besides drumming, what else should they talk to you about?
If someone wants to pique my interest, they should ask me about music and drumming for sure, but mostly ask me about company building, because that's what I am all about. I'm not so much a trend picker when it comes to venture capital. I care intensely that it's a good idea in a good market, but I really believe if you pick good product fit and good market and you're the one that builds the best company there, that's the model that can really prevail. And that's why I'm here, to do that.
Mark, we're so happy to have you part of the Costanoa team. So thank you for joining us.
Glad to be here. Thanks, Martina.